Today's video is sponsored by IO Interactive. You can check out 007 First Light for yourself with the link in the description. I just recently watched through the 007 First Light gameplay reveal, and like me, you might be wondering what kind of game even is this? I mean, a lot was going on in this trailer, some cinematic, some felt on rails, some was giving you freedom to do whatever you wanted, there was a lot of choice, there wasn't. What was going on? Because it had action sequences, story-focused cutscenes, driving, but then it also had stealth missions in big crowded spaces with Hitman-like objectives that could be tackled in a multitude of different ways. That last part is probably easier to explain first. With IO Interactive being the developer of the Hitman games, it's clear they wanted to expand on their stealth gameplay systems with 00 First Light, but there's a lot going on here that's different. You can really expect the same sort of stealth gameplay loop that makes Hitman so unique though. You'll have an objective and it's up to you as a player to navigate this large crowded space to work out how to solve it. And just like in Hitman, there'll be many different ways to figure it out. There's no right answer so long as you aren't caught. And in this case, sometimes getting caught isn't a problem either, because James Bond will use his charm or persuasion to bluff his way into situations and get out of dangerous places where he shouldn't really be.
What?
Ken Banks, penetration tester. I need to have a stern word with your manager.
Good to have you on the team.
So even if he does get caught, sometimes even that isn't the wrong answer in this game, which seems pretty cool. You know, Hitman was all about using force wherever necessary, whereas James Bond shies away from doing that unless he really has to. And like we saw, there'll be more opportunities for him to command his way through with his own charm and charisma, which is a really cool gameplay feature.
Oi, I need to find Saunders. There's a chance the suspect is dressed as security. The bastard could be hiding right under your noses.
Damn. I'll keep an eye out for new faces.
That's not to say you won't be able to get into a brawl if necessary. Speaking of brawls, the melee combat in 007 First Light has been given quite a lot of attention. You can use a combination of parries, throws, and takedowns that will seamlessly react to and work alongside the environment. James Bond will also sometimes be given the license to kill. At this point, this is where the gun comes out. And funnily enough, the gun sequences actually feel more action-packed than anything we've seen in Hitman. You'll be able to use a mix of different weapons, gadgets, melee, and the environment to take down enemies in some pretty creative ways. And for the driving, that's a gameplay feature they've worked on to feel very James Bond. Whilst the gameplay trailer focused on some slower driving at the start, the end of the gameplay trailer paints a better picture of what the car chase sequences will feel like in First Light. There'll be chances to use shortcuts, and there'll be lots of different cinematic sequences and action events planned around every corner that could happen at any time to spruce up the chase as well. It's clear that IO Interactive wanted to make sure that it always felt like a cinematic experience to truly hone in on the James Bond name. So there's an underlying story, lots of action, many cinematic sequences and cutscenes, and a lot of charm and personality from the young James Bond, voice acted by Patrick Gibson. Story will be an important part for 00 First Light. So what is the story? Well, in First Light, you'll follow a young 26-year-old James Bond who is still an inexperienced MI6 agent, who during the game you'll get to see put under the test to see if he's worth the 00 title. It's the first time we get to see how James Bond's earlier days would have been, and at the time, he's a little reckless, underexperienced, and definitely makes mistakes. And things won't always go as he would have planned, and that will be seen in story elements and in gameplay as well. To put it simply, 007 First Light is essentially the origin story of James Bond. And the developers have clearly tried to create any gameplay or cinematic experience in this game that shows James Bond in action. So it's got the stealth, the action, the cutscenes, the charm, charisma, everything that you would expect from a James Bond game has been put into this to give you a whole James Bond experience. Now, whilst the game seems to have a pretty clear sequential experience where you'll follow the story and take part in missions chronologically, it also doesn't mean the game will miss out on the replayability that made Hitman so fun. According to James Bond's Steam page, you'll be able to test your skills and replay your favorite missions with additional modifiers for endless espionage fun. Alright, so I think the James Bond vibe is definitely there. You've got fast car chase sequences, guns, melee combat, charm, and personality from James Bond himself, and all sorts of explosions and action-packed cinema. But let's take a closer look at the stealth aspect a bit. With IO Interactive making this game, I know a lot of Hitman fans will be wondering if it's a game they'll also be interested in. The gameplay we got to see near the end of the gameplay trailer really helped to showcase what 007 First Light would have to offer in this regard. We got to see how there will be different ways to take the same objective. James Bond is tasked with finding a camera in this gameplay sequence to blend in as a photographer, and he could do this by sneaking into a crowd and stealing a camera, distracting a guard. Like I said earlier, there's no wrong way to play as long as you don't get caught, or sometimes even getting caught is still not necessarily a wrong way to play, which is quite interesting. And when it comes to dealing with multiple people, you could choose to sneak by them, take them out by force, distract them, use some of the gadgets that James Bond has at his arsenal. There really doesn't seem to be a clear-cut way to approach a lot of situations. Instead, IO Interactive will give you the tools and gadgets. It's up to you how you approach it. Just like with Hitman, we could expect different objects, different items that you can find in the world that then you can pick up and use to solve different situations. The opening sequence saw James Bond finding a lighter that he could use to set fire to a wheelbarrow of leaves, which created a distraction for him to sneak into an upper balcony window. This is definitely the kind of game you wouldn't want to look up tutorials for, because a lot of the fun, just like in Hitman, will come down to creatively finding your own ways to deal with the different stealth missions the game has in store. But it doesn't always go as planned. Like I said, sometimes making the wrong mistake doesn't mean that the mission will just suddenly end. Instead, a change of pace. Getting caught could mean James Bond will need to fight his way out, and a quiet, stealthy mission could suddenly turn into an action-packed scene where James Bond is given the license to kill, and then you're forced into a firefight. I think it's these kind of things that will make 007 First Light feel like its own game, even though there are clear inspirations from the Hitman series. Now, this is going to have a big story tied to it, right? 007 First Light will have a bit more of a focus on the story, but that doesn't mean once you get the game, that's over, right? You play it once and you're done. Just like with Hitman, IO Interactive have hinted that there will be post-launch content similar to the Hitman World of Assassination game. IO Interactive boss Hakan Abrak said that they're going to take the learnings from World of Assassination. He said, "We obviously have tons of experience now from World of Assassination and tons of experience on how to extend a single-player experience by giving desirable free content to players." So it looks like there's going to be a lot to do in this game, and once you play the story, that's not the end of the story, so to speak. If at any point you found what I've showed interesting, 007 First Light will be available on Nintendo Switch 2, PlayStation 5, PC, and Xbox Series X and S, releasing on March 27th, 2026. You can click the link in the description to check it out now and wishlist it if you're interested.